Hello, everyone. This is Kelly Covert, and I'm happy to bring you another Symphoria Community Spotlight. Today, I'm sitting down with Loren Cunningham, who is the Director of Community Engagement and Prevention Strategy at Vera House. Welcome, Loren. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So, Vera House does wonderful things in our community. I had the great privilege to be at the Vera House luncheon last year. And I was telling you before we got on, I just cried when people shared what a difference Vera House made in their life. So why don't you tell our audience about Vera House and what you do in the community?
So Vera House, I think a lot of people think they know what Vera House does, but I always welcome the opportunity to share the full breadth of the work that we do. So as an organization, we work to both prevent and respond to issues of partner violence, what some people also think of as domestic violence, sexual violence, elder abuse, and then also other forms of crime. So it's a pretty broad work that we do, and we do that in a variety of different ways. So a lot of times people, when they hear Vera House, they think about us as like a sheltering service, which is part of our roots and how we as an organization got started. But really, we've grown to do much more than that. So there's a very comprehensive menu of services, including counseling and advocacy. We work with people who have been hurtful in relationships. Then we do a whole lot of prevention and education work in the community as well.
Mm-hmm. And part of your title is prevention strategy. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? Because I think that's very interesting.
Oh, thank you. So as an organization, if you can imagine, in the early years, the work was incredibly intervention focused, and so very focused on how do we support people that are being impacted by partner violence and sexual violence and elder abuse. And really focused on improving the community response around intervention. But then as the work evolved over time, the realization that we can continue intervening till we're blue in the face, till the end of time. But if we don't move into doing true, what we call primary prevention work, so work to really prevent violence from happening, we will never end up in a place where we can reach our vision of a world free of violence and abuse. Mm-hmm. So that prevention strategy piece is really us having an intentional focus on prevention work and trying to shift the norms in the community that support and enable partner violence, sexual violence, and elder abuse to occur.
Mm-hmm. It's a really upstream view of how to deal with problems, which I love. Like, I think so often we're just responding.
Yes. Absolutely.
And what I hear you saying is this is really about stopping it before it starts. And that is what we want, right? We don't want anyone to be in those situations.
Right.
Where they have to come to Vera House to the shelter.
Right. And so we often talk about, we could keep building more and more shelters. That's not going to keep people from ending up needing the services. And so that really is the upstream approach. How do we, the idea of how do you keep people from falling in the river in the first place instead of saving them from drowning?
Yep. Yes, we must have listened to the same podcast.
Probably.
Well, so do you have a success story that you feel comfortable sharing with us?
Absolutely. I was trying, there's so many, like you said, there's so many. I think when people think about a work, oftentimes they're like, oh gosh, it's so painful and hard. And absolutely it is, but it's also incredibly hopeful because we see people's lives being transformed and changed. I think a couple of things that I'd share, and in light of the fact that we're living in this pandemic, we've tried to really focus on what are the silver linings that have come out of that. So one thing that I think about is we have what we call our evergreen support group. So elder abuse is sort of newer work that Vera House has been focused on. And we created a support group for people that were impacted by abuse in later life, in their either intimate relationships or by other family members. And so once we all went into, lockdown or whatever you want to call this, social distancing, we had to really scramble to try to figure out how do we continue to maintain these services, knowing that the need just continues to increase. And so we moved to a virtual platform with our Evergreen support group. And we were really concerned that with the older demographic, that technology access might be a real challenge for people. And we were concerned that we might maybe lose connection with people. But what we've actually seen is the opposite, and that that has actually created more access for people, because a barrier for people in that demographic may have been transportation, or maybe not feeling comfortable driving to the city to come to our office to participate in that group. So we've actually seen an increase in access for that service, which has been really refreshing and a bit of an eye-opener for us.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one place where we've seen a success. The other thing too, I think about, we for a number of years, we run a 24-hour crisis and support line. So that's a way for people to get access to our services. And for a number of years, we were talking about, do we want to create a web chat service that would be more accessible to people that maybe either can't make a phone call, or just don't feel like that's the best fit for them. And so in March, when we all, holed up in our homes, if you will, we sought out support from the Central New York Community Foundation, and they gave us a grant to be able to start that web chat service. And so since March, we've now been running this service. It's not 24 hours a day yet at this point, but it runs 8:30 a.m. to 11 p.m., 7 days a week. And we're finding that there continues to be an increase in people reaching out that way. And that really, with COVID, with people being so isolated, I've taken chats now where people are literally in their homes, their partners are there with them. They literally can't make a phone call, but they're able to discreetly reach out via the chat service. And so that feels like a real success, that we're connecting with people in that way, and creating, again, more access than we maybe previously had.
Mm-hmm. I feel like this pandemic has been such a weird and strange gift in so many ways. I've just seen, in talking with other organizations, I've seen this huge amount of creativity and action taking that has really pushed the work that we're all doing out in a new and different way. Yeah. And, it's just fascinating to me. And I'm so glad that Vera House is feeling that way too. These things that were long on the list, right, of something to do. And then out of necessity, we must do that. And what a difference it makes.
Right. What is that saying about opportunity, crisis and opportunity, right? It's the reality.
Yeah.
We're all living it now.
It's wonderful. So one of the things that we talk a lot about at Symphoria is advocacy and awareness. Mm-hmm. So if you were saying to a board member or to someone who knows Vera House well, mm-hmm. this is what you need other people to know, what would you say to them? What do you want our audience to know is the number one thing about Vera House?
I guess, and again, you've already touched on that my title has this prevention focus. I think for us, there's this piece about being an ambassador and living the work in a way that we really hope creates opportunity for change in the community. So it's not just, we don't want board members to just go out and be able to talk about our services. We want them to be able to challenge those social norms. So things related to rigid gender norms, things, belief systems related to power in relationships, consent, the use of violence as a way to solve problems. We want people to really be able to have deep, meaningful conversations to challenge those cultural norms. Because again, that's that place where we believe that if we start to see that shift in those norms, we will at some point down the road see the reduction in violence that we're really striving for. So I guess it's that type of, being an ambassador in that way that really works to shift the culture. Mm-hmm. And that I think also it's important to acknowledge that social justice lens, when we're talking about power and oppression, to be thinking broadly about that. It's not just about sexism, it's about racism, it's about ableism, heterosexism. So really having to embrace that and live that in a way that's really meaningful and alive in people's day-to-day world.
I love that. I love it's the embodiment of
Mm-hmm.
the mission, really, is what I hear you saying.
Mm-hmm.
If someone is listening today and they think to themselves, that's something I want to embody, how do they get involved? How would one go about getting involved with Vera House and supporting Vera House?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there's a laundry list of different ways, and hopefully this conversation's inspired people to do that, right? There's the things, obvious things. I feel like if people are interested in volunteering, we have a very robust volunteer program. We couldn't do the work that we do without volunteers doing all sorts of work in our organization. Of course, people can also, attend our events, support us. But I think there's, again, that if you look at the embodiment piece, how people can get involved in the work in a really meaningful way. So one example of that is we have a program that we call our 12 Men model. And so I think when people think about issues of partner violence and sexual violence, they often think of men as perpetrators and women as victims. And we know that, that's not how it always works out, right?
Mm-hmm.
We also, though, want to be framing the conversation around men's role in prevention. And so how can men get involved to take a leadership role in preventing partner violence and sexual violence? And so this 12 Men model is a way for men to engage as an individual and then invite in their sphere of influence. So that could be a group of friends. It could be a group of colleagues. It could be a group of, other men at their faith community. But a sphere of influence and an opportunity for those men to engage in dialogue around how do they build healthy masculinity? How do they model that for young people in their lives? And again, it's that shifting culture piece. So there are other opportunities like that. We have an initiative called Raise the Bar, where we're working with nightlife establishments to interrupt patterns of sexual violence and sexual aggression in nightlife establishments. So there are a lot of different ways that people can get involved.
Mm-hmm. I love that, the 12 man, is that
12 Men model.
12 men model. Yeah, that's really awesome. And I think right now, if you're watching this, one way that you can help Vera House is just to share this. Mm-hmm. Share it, and that will bring more awareness to the amazing work that Vera House is doing in Central New York for men and women of all ages. Throughout. And so, Loren, thank you again for being here with us today. We'll be sure to put the Vera House website in the post so everyone can go click there and learn more about how to volunteer if that's calling you, or how to get your sphere of influence together if that's calling to you. And as you listen, to those of you who are watching today, if you know of an organization that you would like to have featured in another Symphoria Community Spotlight, just reach out or put a comment in and let us know, and we will get right on that. Thanks, Loren, and have a great week.
Thank you, Kelly.
Bye-bye.
Bye.